All right. That moves us on to number 4. Number 4 came out November 21st, 1985. This is Sly's third in a row writing and directing. So he did this dance, you would think 3 times. We'll talk about that later. But that is a chore and a half to do this 3 times back to back to back in the franchise history. This budget came in a little bit more, $28 million this time. Box office, $300.4 million.
Wow.
It is the highest grossing film in the entire franchise history. This is the one. It is the third highest grossing film domestically and second internationally. So, folks, this did some big business, and many consider this the pinnacle. This is U.S. versus Russia. This comes in a perfect time when the Cold War has just wrapping up, or about to wrap up, or has wrapped up, however you want to look at it. It is sensational, to say the least. We need to do another shout out to a one-time character here, and the incredible Dolph Lundgren playing Drago, the massive, massive cold killer fighting out of the Soviet Union. Gentlemen,
would somebody tell Derek how to say the guy's name already? I'm sorry. That's ridiculous.
No.
Drago, not no. Drago. He's not Drano.
Yes, he is. Because that's the American way to say it. Okay?
Like your papa. He ate his spinach every day.
God.
And that was cold as can be when that Russian wife went up to Apollo's wife and tried to play nice.
Oh, yes. Regine Nielsen.
Yeah.
Another newcomer and former wife of Stallone, right?
Yep.
Yes. And obviously you have found a new flame in Flavor Flav down the line.
Yes.
Moving up. Excuse me. No disrespect, Flavor. I love Public Enemy. All right, let's talk about it. Who goes first?
I'll go first this time.
Right. Go ahead.
So, wow, this movie is amazing. This movie does a lot of stuff right. Tells just a fantastic story. Again, I always remember this part. My sister and I would talk about it, how the training montage of this was so different than any of the other films. With this one, you had Drago, who, was doing all the high-tech stuff and steroids and everything that you really, negative stuff, in a way.
Cyborg.
Yes. And you had Rocky, who's sitting there in Russia, and he's, has the ropes, and he's running in the snow, and he's chopping wood, and it's just an amazing sequence. Compare and contrast on how they did it. For me, I loved Apollo and the fact that he died. Bobo knows this very well. That's my one really big negative of this movie. What I would have loved to have seen is maybe where Apollo Creed would have been paralyzed. And Derek, you can agree or disagree with me on this, and that he's pissed off at Rocky. Very upset at Rocky, and that maybe he's got to he realizes towards the end when Rocky's training that, he forgives Rocky, and all he wants is that for America to win. That's what I would have done differently on this. I don't know. I still love the movie.
Doesn't that sound like a great story there? See him wheeling around and
well, no, but whatnot. I don't know. I think it would have been, I don't know. I just felt it would have been.
I don't think an audience would have liked seeing Apollo Creed, disabled like that.
So they liked him dead. They were fine with him being dead.
It's not that they liked him.
It's not that they're fine with him being dead. It's the fact that it gives Rocky a reason to do what he does, and I'll get into that when I talk about it. But yeah, I disagree with you on that one, Josh.
Okay, that's fine. But that fight at the end, God, that was just a crazy fight. And doesn't that fight to you guys seem like it took a while, right? Like it wasn't fast and it was brutal, and it just
it's about the same as some of the other fights.
You think so? Like I just
you see two rounds at the beginning, then you do a montage through the remaining
Right.
rounds all the way up to round 15, and then you do the final round. It's similar to what you would have seen in, say, Rocky 2.
Yeah, I was
Do you
about to say.
think
I was gonna
Rocky?
say that.
Do you think Rocky was not confident in the early rounds, and towards the end, he almost got that eye of the tiger back and the whole Apollo
No,
training?
no,
You thought he was good the whole way, like he was
absolutely.
just okay. Okay.
I mean, the guy's freaking running up a mountain screaming out his name. I mean, you're going to
Yeah.
tell me he's not ready to go on this? No, it's just simply that the opponent that he's fighting, and I'll get into that in a second. Go ahead, Josh.
No, and then the ending. This is very interesting because I think, as we all know, Sylvester Stallone during COVID came out with a director's cut of Rocky and Rocky Four, and I actually really enjoyed the ending of that one more than the theatrical cut. I thought it was
I've got
fighting
some
with the eye
feelings
of
on
the
the
tiger. Of course you do.
I've
Of
got some
course you do.
feelings on the director's cut.
But I just thought the whole movie in itself, though, was, I mean, like I said at the beginning of the podcast tonight, that's my first image is of, Rocky Four. That's how I got into the film series. I love the James Brown sequence. That was awesome. And living in
Yep.
America. Yeah, but it's just, to me, it feels like just such a different movie. And I don't know if it's the time period or what it is, but every time I watch it, it just is so different.
Okay. You done there, Josh?
I'm done.
No. I'm just asking before I start talking about it. I didn't want to interrupt what you had to say because this is to answer that question or that thought that you're having that it's so different. If Rocky 3 was a balance between an 80s movie and a Rocky movie, Rocky 4 is the 80th of 80s movies that there is.
Yeah.
It is simply what it is. It's a product of the 1980s, and you can see that in the way that the film is. It's not a long movie. It's about 90 minutes, maybe a little bit longer. It's not very long. It has this killer soundtrack that you see in a lot of movies during the 80s, which are why the training sequences are so different. Heck, you have that whole montage where he's driving a car and you see all these scenes from the previous films, and you keep seeing Drago in that. So the film is different. Stallone is a legit action star by this point. Look at the way his body is built. I mean, there's so few of us like that. And anyway, so the way he's built, the way the film is structured, it is structured like an 80s action movie. Now, the film itself I think it's a fun 80s movie. There's a lot to like in this movie. And there's also some cheesy stuff that you see from an 80s movie. You got the robot, for example. A lot of people didn't like the robot. In fact, the robot was taken out of the director's cut. But that's something that you would have seen in an 80s movie. And so it's got a lot of fun stuff. It's got a lot of cheesy stuff. But what it does real well is the story is simple. It's almost a revenge type story, because Rocky's trying to get revenge for what happened, or not necessarily revenge, but avenge his the death of his friend. And again, it's something that's very simple. And the film itself, this whole idea of, East versus West, the United States versus the Soviet Union, it came at the right time, because it wasn't that around the time that Gorbachev had become leader of Russia.
Yep.
So it was the right time that it came out. And you were talking about the fight, about how brutal it is. If you listen, it almost sounds like a lot of the punches, they almost sound like bombs hitting.
Yeah.
And I think that was done on purpose for it to sound the way that it does. And
that's interesting.
I think it was done on purpose. I mean, I could be wrong on that, but that's just kind of what I take away from it. And because literally these two were going to war.
That's a great takeaway. I've never, ever heard that. Derek, have you? But it makes sense.
And now that I have heard it, it makes total sense. Yeah.
And again, I could be completely wrong that that's what they were going for, but it seems that that's what landed. And then, Josh, you and I remember we took that English class where we learned about archetypes,
Yep.
and Rocky 4 has a lot of those archetypes that you see in literature or in stories that you've got good versus evil, light and darkness. That's why Rocky's got a white mouthpiece. Drago has a black mouthpiece.
Mhm.
And you've got this idea of nature versus technology, and you've got Rocky out training in nature while Drago's doing all the high-tech stuff and the steroids and everything. And I think it's just a great film. It's fun. It's patriotic. It makes you feel good when the movie's done. It's at this ultimate high. Now, I said I had a couple thoughts about the director's cut. The director's cut has some scenes in it that I like. It has a lot of scenes in it that I like, actually. But I don't like the way that the director's cut was actually structured. I think it would have been better if they had done more an extended cut of the theatrical version. Just have the theatrical version and turn around and throw some of those scenes back into the film where they were intended. Like, for example, I actually think that the funeral is done better in the director's cut than it is in the theatrical. And some of the scenes in the director's cut feel more like a Rocky film. So I think it would have been great to have some of those back into the theatrical cut, and maybe they could have found a balance between the two. But overall, the theatrical film is fun, it's patriotic, and you feel good at the end of the day.
This was along those lines of patriotic films. This was during a time when a lot of that was happening too. I believe Top Gun was around this time.
Yeah.
Um,
86.
yeah, I'm trying to remember some others, but this was right in the mix of that Americana flavor that was happening. There's a lot to like about this movie. Bob already said that and gave a great synopsis of what there is to like. I will tell you that there is one part in the film that always gets me, other than Apollo getting killed, because that was nasty. But it's when Duke gives him the speech in the house about, basically giving him his. I think he gave him the trunks. I think that was that where he
In
hid
Russia.
Yeah,
in Russia, right?
Yeah, in Russia. And then the other scene that always gets me, I don't know why, is when Duke is holding Rocky by the head and puts his forehead up to him and goes, "No pain, no pain." That gets me every single time. And I don't know why, but it's almost like in the fighting world, Duke and Rocky lost everything. Because now Rocky doesn't have Mickey and he doesn't have Apollo. And now Duke's only got Rocky as his fighter. So now they
he even refers to Apollo as his son.
Yeah, that's right. In that
movie. You
movie.
mentioned that scene where he's talking to him. Yeah. He even turns around and says, "Apollo was like my son. I raised him."
Mm-hmm. And now Rocky is really all that Duke has left.
Wait, but did he give him the trunks? Or Rocky, I thought, already had the trunks.
I think Rocky already had them at that point because Apollo wore them in his fight with Drago, and of course,
I think Duke handed them to him just because he was holding them or something like that.
There's something that kind of gets overlooked in this film because of the way the next film starts, but in the film, Rocky actually gives up the championship in order to fight Drago.
Right, we just talked about that.
If you watch like all the newspaper clippings and stuff like that, right as they're going into the press conference with Drago, they're saying stuff that the boxing commission wouldn't sanction the fight, and that Rocky ended up giving up the championship so he could go to Russia to fight. Now, obviously, in the next film, he comes back, he's still champ. And I was actually talking with Josh about this the other day. It leads me to believe that maybe since Rocky was the undisputed champ, that maybe the title was broken apart at that point, because to become an undisputed champ, you have to have the belt from all the different divisions. And so maybe it was split apart and went to somebody else at that point, and that's why he was still champ later. Just kind of a technicality, but a lot of people forget that he actually gave up the title in order to do it, because when you come back in the next film, he's already champ. So
the other part, that's a great point. That did slip my mind. The other thing that I really did love about number 4 was the fact that there was such a contrast of a villain from 3 to 4. Clubber Lang couldn't stop running his mouth. Drago barely says anything.
Yeah.
What he does say counts. And the scene when he is about to fight Apollo, and Apollo's getting all this, glitz, glamour, and James Brown and dancing his took us off. It's great. But Drago is just rising from a black ring at the bottom. And that summed up everything about that villain. That's exactly how that should have gone. And so I love that contrast. Again, you guys have summed up enough about Rocky IV. It's a great one. It is Americana personified. A good old slice of American apple pie. A la mode. Put some ice cream on it. Any other thoughts on that one?
no, I think we're getting to the one we're all ready to talk about.
Yeah, I think this is it. Okay, here we are.
Judgment, I'll sue.
Thank you. Sue me for what? All right, Rocky V. November 20th, Thanksgiving, 1990 is when this came out.
Wow.
Written by Sly, but directed by a returning John Avildsen. He came back for this one.
Yep.
And the budget for this one was $42 million. The box office was $119.9 million.
Ouch.
Yep, this one didn't do so hot. So that's too bad. But it is, I guess, fun for what it's worth. Unfortunately, in this one, we don't get the Rocky and the ring fight that we're looking for. My ring's outside. But
TKO from Tokyo.
we
Tell me you're a piece of garbage. You know that?
the sound of the parade coming through. All right, let's get into this one. We do have to give a big shout out to George Washington Duke. This is the only time you're going to see him in the whole franchise. Go back and watch it if nothing else, just for that. All right, gents, go for it.
Go ahead, Bob.
So the fifth film problem with it's got a lot of problems. And one, it's coming down from the high that was Rocky IV. And what is the first thing that they hit you with right after that? There's something wrong with Rocky.
Ugh.
That's the first thing that they hit you with. Yep. He's sitting there in the shower and he's asking for Adrian because there's something wrong with him. And she comes in and you could tell he's got some sort of neurological damage or whatnot, because he's shaking. And it just, like, after that emotional high that you just had, I mean, Rocky single-handedly ended the Cold War with that speech that he gave. And all of a sudden, this is what we're starting off with. And so right off the bat, they take you from this high that you're on, and they bring you crashing down. So right off the bat, the film hits you. Then, he comes back and he gets offered a title match. And, because you have Duke shows up there at the airport and he's like, can you get my man here, Union Kane, a shot at the heavyweight championship of the world? Balboa, I want the opportunity to take what you got. And so, he's got this title match presented to him, but he announces he's going to retire because he's thinking, okay, well, this is it for me. And then all of a sudden, bam, it hits you again. Now he's lost all his money because it turns out his lawyer had taken everything. So now he's got brain damage because, then it goes into that he goes and gets an exam from a doc who says that he's got brain damage. So he loses all his money. He's got brain damage. He can't take the fight that he needs to take to actually get out of trouble. And then he ends up having to go live back on the streets right off and this is all within the first 20 minutes. And so
downer.
It's not the film that people wanted. And then all of a sudden it goes into this whole, spiel where he's training this up and coming boxer who turns out was just using him to move forward in his own career. and then he's having these problems with his son. It just seemed like it was problem after problem after problem after problem. And then, like you said, at the end, when you finally do get to the fight, it's not the fight that anybody wanted. It happens out on the street, which I actually think was kind of cool. I know a lot of people will disagree with me on that. I thought I'll give them credit for trying something different, but it's not the fight that they wanted. And then let me ask you a question, and you guys tell me what you think, because at no point, even with the brain damage and all that, at no point did I feel like Rocky was the underdog in that fight.
No,
because he's fighting on his turf and he's fighting
Yeah.
against a boxer that he trained.
Yep.
And that's not Rocky. Rocky is an underdog story. Now, in all fairness, how do you come up with an opponent that's better than Drago and better than Mr. T in the ones before, or even before that, Apollo, who Rocky refers to as the perfect fighter? And yet, so how, Tommy Gunn just didn't do it for me as an opponent. And so the film just had so many things wrong with it. Obviously, George Washington Duke was a fun character.
Judgment, I'll sue.
And we all enjoyed seeing him out on there. And he's probably the one that we end up quoting the most. But really, he's the only thing that's memorable. Well, maybe not the only thing, because I do think there's a couple of memorable scenes in there. Like the whole scene where has the flashback to Mickey, I think was a good scene.
Because Mickey loves you.
Yeah, I actually think that's a good scene. But the film just has so many issues with it.
Go ahead, Josh.
Oh God, boys, there's a lot to unravel here. This movie what a downgrade from all the others. First of all, like Bobby said, you start, with him in the shower with these neurological defects going on. And then you've got all of a sudden he's got the necklace from Mickey out of nowhere, just, hanging there. We've never seen Rocky wearing a necklace. Then they have this whole story about all of a sudden Mickey, you don't even hear about since he's died. And all of a sudden, do you remember when Mickey did this? And then they show the image of him before the Apollo fight, and he gives him the gloves, which he never did. And it was just so, so weird. And then I think Bob would have probably said this, but he didn't, about his son. Here we have him as a little kid, like a kindergartner, and you're telling me the next week or so he's a teenager? I mean, that was so ridiculous. And and again, I think it's like, Bobby and I always talk about this with one of our other favorite shows, 24, when season 5 of 24 was the greatest season ever. And what happened was season 6 had to follow it. So here you had a great movie in Rocky 4, and then Rocky 5 had to follow it. I will say this. My favorite scene is what Derek just said with Mickey, when he says, "Get up, you son of a," Mickey loves you. That gives you chills. I mean, the
real quick,
street
Josh.
fight.
Sorry to interrupt. Just real quick. You mentioned about his son being much older. That was simply just so he could have his own son in the film. That's really what that came down to. Now, I agree with what you're saying, but that's really what it came down to.
Okay. I mean, again, I don't know. That just bugged me. And then him losing the money, and just the whole story just to me fell apart. Maybe the street fight was okay. And maybe I guess they wanted to do something different because the whole Drago thing was so, awesome. They're like, well, what are we going to do? We have to think outside the box. So, excuse me, we have, this real boxer, John Morrison, who, by the way, was the Duke.
Was it John Morrison? I thought it was Tommy Morrison.
Tommy Morrison in real life. Tommy, sorry. And, I think if they had fought in the ring and did a story in the ring, it would have been
Gunn only fights in the ring.
Better. Yep. I think it would have been better if they had done that. And I don't know. It just was like they were almost trying too hard.
You know what I think it was is you mentioned, Jarek, that the original director returned for this film, and I think they tried to go back and tried to capture some of the magic of the original film because Rocky himself, in a lot of ways, is dumbed down again a little bit.
Yeah.
Just in the way that he speaks and stuff like that. It's different than the way he is in, say, Rocky 4 or even Rocky 3. It's like he goes back from, I don't want to say he was like sophisticated in the way that he was talking necessarily in the other two films, but there's definitely a difference, and they kind of go back to that. But I will say we did get some great lines in Rocky 5. There's some fun stuff, like it's just simple stuff that Rocky says, like when Duke's talking to him on the street, outside of the gym, and he turns around and tells him, not like Mark Twain once said, virtue was never as respectable as money. And you've got Paul, he's like, who was Twain? Oh, he was a painter. He was a painter.
A businessman with reason to brain to retire when he could still pull in the bread, baby.
These are your medical reports. Not so good. But we can work around it.
On the papers. This is your medical report. It's not so good, but we can work around it.
Sue me for what?
Rocky 5 has some redeeming qualities in it.
This ain't no pie eating contest.
And I think that if they had done some things differently, it could have been a good film. But it is the stinker of the franchise.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna put in my thoughts here, and I'm gonna make them quick, boys. Other than George Washington Duke, film's pretty much pointless.
Yeah.
Well, there's no real. I mean, what gets accomplished? Nothing really, right?
No. Apparently, I think, Bob, did you tell me this? The original script called for Rocky to die?
I think originally, yes. He was supposed to die in that. And then, of course, that didn't happen. Stallone reworked the script. But so, yeah, that would have just been another downer. You mentioned, Derek, that that nothing really gets accomplished. I mean, you could make an argument, well, maybe he fixes things with his son. But in the next film, he's having some problems with his son again.
Yeah,
exactly.
So, and granted, they're at a different point in his son's life, and there are different types of problems. But really, yeah, what gets resolved?
Yeah, it just leaves not a great feeling. Bad taste in your mouth is, other than pointless. That's the best way I can explain it.
And it's good that you say that it leaves a bad taste in your mouth, because like I just said, you feel good after Rocky 4.
Yeah, you do.
You don't feel so good after Rocky 5. Even with the ending that they tried to end it on a hopeful moment where they're going to the museum together and he gives his son the chain, the necklace, and the necklace now. And he's like, you see his son, as long as this statue's here, the pigeons is always going to have a place to, they try to end it like on this light note, but it just
dumb.
Work.
It was dumb.
It just doesn't work.
Look, to be fair, you came off such a high with 4 really awesome movies. To try and do a 5th and maybe try to even recapture that magic probably isn't going to work in your favor. No. And that's no knock on them. I think it's just very hard to do.
But again, Stallone didn't direct it. All the others, maybe if he had directed it.
No, but
he still wrote it.
But then again, you're rolling dice on that too. How do you know? Because again, it's still coming off a huge high.
Yeah, true.
So, it's I don't want to sound totally negative about it, even though I am.
I will.
Yeah, it was not good.
It was not good. It was pointless. But there wasn't really much I think you could have done to make a 5th. You really would have had to sit down and think long and hard about that.
And Tony wasn't in it. He was in it for 1 minute, not even 1 minute.
Well, he didn't have to be in it because Rocky was the trainer in Rocky 5.
I know. It would have been, I don't know. It would have been cool I just think they could have done a totally different storyline.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on. Speaking of other things that can somewhat be downers as well, we took a pretty big lapse of time here to get to the last one. December 20th, 2006 is when this one came out. They just called it Rocky Balboa because Rocky 6 may have been taken. So this one had a budget of 24 million, box office 156.2. So
Wow.
not terrible, but certainly, with the others that had success, nothing to write home about. This was written and directed by Sly again, so he wanted the last take on everything. So good on him for that. This one is good, I guess, for what it is, but Bob, to your point, talk about downers.
Okay, all right. We're gonna have some fun here on this one then, because I completely disagree with you.
All right.
I like Rocky Balboa.
Okay. What do you like about it?
Well, I think it's the closest that you're gonna have to the original film, as far as the feel of it, the way that it goes. Yeah, you've got some down moments as far as the fact that you find out Adrian has passed away, but I think for the most part, you've got this character who is at a different point in his life now. He's trying to move forward with something new to like that next chapter of his life, and to kind of come to grips that his life's not over. There's still more there, and the fight kind of symbolizes that, him kind of overcoming that and moving forward. And just kind of getting rid of everything that's kind of built up with him. Josh and I actually went to see this one together. And I will admit, the audience, they had fun with that. We were cheering at the end of it. We had a good time. And especially when you talk about how bad Rocky V was, this was more a return to the roots of the franchise. And I think it's got some great scenes in it. I love the scene where he's talking with Paulie in the there in the meat house. And
what's the matter?
Exactly. He's like, well, there's still stuff in the basement. And I think that's a great scene. And I love the scene where he's going around to all the different places where he was with Adrian. When he goes back to where the ice rink was at, or he goes back to his old apartment and he's remembering everything. I think those are some good scenes. It easily has the best speech in the entire franchise. It ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward, about how much you can take and keep moving forward, because that's how winning is done. That's easily the best speech in the entire franchise. I love this film. I think it's pretty good. And I love, what's his name? Milo Ventimiglia or whatever, who plays his son.
Yeah.
I can't pronounce his name, but he was in Gilmore Girls. He was in Heroes.
Yeah.
What's that show that you love, Josh, that he was in? This Is Us.
Yeah. He did a great job in that show.
Yeah, he's a fantastic actor. And to have him play Rocky's son in this, I thought was well done. It was nice seeing some of the characters come back with Paulie, and you even see little Marie come back out of nowhere.
Spider Rico.
Jesus wants me to work. He's down in there and he's cooking in there. He even gets that dog, and he's running around with that dog. You see Paulie looking at, what an ugly dog, and I love Rocky Balboa. I think it's a good movie. And then just a real quick, Derek, to add on to what you said, that maybe Rocky VI was taken. I think that's more just a product of the times, that so many films were going away from adding numbers to it. Instead, you begin to see films that just have names, like look at the Avengers movies, for example, from the MCU. You got Avengers, Age of Ultron, Infinity War, Endgame. They don't say Avengers 2, Avengers 3, Avengers 4. They have they got rid of the number, and I think that's just more a product of the times. Heck, even Stallone's other franchise that he returned to after this one, the fourth Rambo film is just called Rambo.
Yeah, that's true. He's making another Rambo, by the way.
That's what I'm hearing, that he's playing with that idea. I don't know if ultimately it'll happen.
The trailer's out.
Is it?
Mm-hmm. John Barenthal plays the villain.
Really? Like the real? Wait a minute.
I'm wanting to say that's probably like a fan trailer out
Are
there.
you sure it's not a fan trailer?
It looked fairly, from what I could tell,
When's it coming out?
summer.
I haven't heard anything like that. I'm
That's
thinking that's a
interesting.
fan trailer.
You think so?
I'm thinking so.
I don't know. We gotta look.
Hold on.
But
We'll have to look.
but I do know he's played with the idea of doing another Rambo.
I think we would have known. Like, I
But-
think we would have been like, Bob would have called me and said, "Did you see the Rambo trailer?"
You know, at the end of the day, I think Rocky Balboa though is a good return to form, and I like the fight that he has in the movie, and obviously I like the fact that he doesn't win. It takes into account that he's older. The only reason he's able to continue to fight strong is because the champ actually breaks his hand during the fight. That's why Rocky's able to keep going, because during that second round you see the champ throw the punch, and then all of a sudden he breaks his hand, and when he goes to his corner he's like, yeah, my hand's broke, and they say, well, it'll numb up on you, it'll numb up, and then you'll be able to start throwing punches. So that gave Rocky the chance he needed to. Now, don't get me wrong, the character, did what he had to do and he overcame a lot, but yeah, they do take his age into account.
Okay. All right. I did good points. Good points. Josh, to you.
I'm going to be honest with both of you for the first time ever. I'm really 6 feet tall. No, I'm kidding.
Shut up!
Oh my God, is that annoying? Oh my God. Oh jeez. The honesty is, I would say this is my least watched Rocky movie. I saw it with Bob. I've maybe seen it, a couple of times. It was on not too long ago, and I watched part of it. The whole thing was interesting. I'm not sure if I love it as much as Bob does. It was good. I think it definitely was a million times better than Rocky 5.
That's not saying much.
No, the ending, I thought the ending was.
See, that's sad, Josh, because you watch Rocky 5 more than you watch this one.
Yeah, probably. I didn't even remember.
It's better than Rocky 5, man.
Can I continue? You've been talking for 45 minutes. I can't get a word out. Bobby's talking every like.
Go ahead.
He's like, my God, he doesn't shut up for a minute. Anyway, love you, Bob. But I didn't even remember what's his name had broken his hand. I remember the whole thing with him, how they figured out the fight that it was a computer image, right? A computer generated fight where Rocky won, right?
That's what started the whole thing. Yeah,
that's where he got the idea, and then how he owned a restaurant. And I didn't like. Here's a pattern: Adrian not being there. I don't think he had to do that. I think that would have been. I don't know. I
think it works.
Of course you do. I thought
she would have been there the whole time. She would have been there the whole time. Rocky, I don't want you to do it. And this way, when he had Marie there, she was saying, no, if this is what you got to do, then go do it, because fighters fight. Because at this point, he's trying to overcome a lot of the issues or the feelings that he's got. And a lot of that stems from the fact that Adrian died.
Got it. Yeah. And the part in the cemetery where he's talking to her, was sweet. And the fight itself, I mean, how many rounds did that go?
It went a full 10 rounds because it was an exhibition fight. Remember, this wasn't for a title or anything like that. They were going to donate some of the money to charity. But yet it turned into a real fight. And a lot of that, again, had to do with the fact that Rocky was there to actually fight. The champ was just there because he needed something to help his publicity.
Publicity stunt.
Right. And now his training montage was definitely different in this one than the others. Didn't he wrap a chain around him? And, it was more like explosive exercises. And it just, because it was
Well, he was building up to have, it was about strength building because like Duke tells him that every time you deliver a shot, it needs to feel like he's kissed the express train. So the whole
Yeah,
point
It's
rattle
so
his brain.
hard it'll rattle his ancestors.
that's it right there. You see, and that was the whole point, is the type of training that he was doing was different than what he had done before.
For this fight, you need speed. You don't have any.
Yeah,
Stuff
that was in
right
the
off.
trailer. I remember.
And then he tells him, what does
Ah.
he tell him about the calcium deposits?
Yeah. And
Yeah,
Paulie goes,
the
I had that
arthritis.
problem.
Go for
So
it,
we're
Derek. What
gonna
did you think of this
heavy
movie?
duty cast iron punches. I
What
love
did
it,
you
dude.
think, Derek?
So okay, I take all your points about what you had mentioned. There is also something to be said about the fact that you wait 26 years and you see something again, you can make it probably a pretty interesting story. Because that's a lot of time for things to pass and a lot of life happens in between that. And so I get that notion. It's just very hard for me to believe that he's going to get in the ring with Mason the Line Dixon, which, by the way, fantastic boxing name. And at his age and how beat up he is and with how many problems he's had, you're going to tell me he has a legit chance to even go 10 rounds? And maybe I'm reading too much into it and I had to suspend some disbelief. But right off the bat, that's a little unrealistic to me. I do like the fact that it does go back to his roots. It ends where it starts. That part's great.
How old
But-
was Rocky in this movie? Do we know?
I'm wanting to say he's somewhere in his 50s.
Yeah, I think it's
I-
somewhere around there.
and- And just to your point, Derek, that about him getting into the fight, that, like I said, I think that's why they take his age into account. The fact, and that's why they have the champ break his hand, because if it's a straight up fight, he's not gonna win it. In fact, he even gets knocked out twice before he even is able to do anything in the fight. It's only after the champ breaks his hand that he's able to do something.
So we are all wrong. I just looked it up. Rocky is 60.
So he's supposed to be 60. Okay.
He's supposed to be 60 years old.
Okay, because my thought was that he was probably in his mid to late 50s, is what I was thinking.
Okay.
And that was, and the only reason I'm basing it on that is how old Stallone was at the time that he's playing the character.
Yep. Yeah, there are some nice, like Duke's speech in that movie is fantastic too, where he's telling him, okay, everything that we did before, throw that out. We can't do that anymore. We have to do it this way. That was a great little montage there. The speech that Rocky gives his son is very good. It's very, very well done. But I guess it's kind of like where we, left off before with 5. I'm not going to call it pointless because the whole point of this was to feel the nostalgia. You wanted to return. You wanted to see where life went for him. And that's understandable. But other than take this charity gig, get some respect from the champ at the time, and you just kind of seeing where life has taken Rocky, which doesn't end up like, off in this, beautiful paradise. It gets him back to where he started. That's kind of where it began and ended for me.
That's why I say that the film is very much like the original film, because if you look in the original film, again, he's not trying to win the fight in the original film. It's about proving something to himself. And that's essentially what's happening here. It's about him trying to move forward in life. And he can't do that until he kind of gets rid of all that frustration and everything that he's feeling. And I love the end sequence where he's walking out. Yeah, like he doesn't even stay to listen to who won the fight. He's walking out already while they're announcing who won the fight. And he's already in the entry, or by the entryway, when they announced that Dixon won, and he's about to walk through, and Paulie and his son bring him back out, and he gets that one final, ovation from the crowd there. And I just thought that was awesome.
Okay.
That was a better image to end the Rocky series with.
You want to cheer for the champ. You want to cheer for the underdog one last time. I get it. I get it.
Are we getting another Rocky movie? We're not going to get another Rocky movie, right?
No, you're getting another Creed, which we forgot to mention. That's how successful this movie franchise was. They made spinoffs from it.
Yeah.
Creed, in just a quick thought on Creed, because I know we don't really want to go into that because I don't consider it part of the main franchise. It is a spinoff. But I do think Stallone gave one of his best performances as Rocky in the first Creed film.
Yeah.
But the one thing I didn't like about the first Creed film is it almost felt like they put him right back to where he was at the beginning of Rocky Balboa. And because he's having the same problems that he had with his son that were already resolved in Rocky Balboa. And so it was just some of those little things here and there. But as a whole, I do like the first two Creed films. Wasn't real big on the third one, but I did like the first two ones.
There you go.
Got it.